This is How About That Podcast, a show dedicated to all things Dallas Cowboys. With both objective and subjective perspectives, How About That Podcast is your place to hear about America's team. Now, here's Joseph Hoyt and Danny Morales.
Hello. I feel like it's been a while because it has. Danny, I've seen you recently. I haven't seen Joey in a minute, and we haven't really talked to our listeners in a while because of a couple things. One, it's the off season. Two, I had my bachelor party, which turned into kind of a 10-day extravaganza across the West Coast, which was very, very fun. Very, very busy. You were on the Oregon part of that, Dan. And then we came back. We had OTAs, was excited to record with Joey. And then I got hit by some stomach bug that apparently is going around. It was one of those stomach things where, like, not to get too graphic into details, but one of those things where you genuinely are contemplating, like, is this the end? Like, am I going to die? And then 24 hours later, you're like, fine. I don't understand it. But yeah, we are now back. We are excited to be back. Danny, how the hell are you?
I'm doing great. It's been far too long. I've had so much to talk about, no one to tell it to, because my wife is not a Cowboys fan, so I just bore her to death. And I'm excited to get it all out now. It sounds like you caught the Bend bug.
The Bend, Oregon bug, man. Don't catch that. The stomach bug. But it was fun. The bachelor party was incredible. It's funny, you talking about having all these Cowboys takes and having nowhere to, talk into.
Yeah, nobody back home wants to hear it. So
I was going to say, Dan, I had multiple complaints at the bachelor party of like, hey, man, like, we love Danny, but dude, can you stop talking about the Cowboys for like a minute?
It's funny. I've been off work for 2 weeks. My buddy said they listened to our podcast while they were eating dinner. And they said, wow, I can really hear your passion. You're a very sad fan. Not sure how to take that.
Yeah, that's what I tell people all the time. Where like when I'm introducing the podcast, I'm like, yeah, it's me as a reporter, very objective, and my buddy who's been a Cowboys fan his entire life being very subjective. And they're like, oh yeah, is he kind of just like a, kind of smoke up his butt, very just full of himself, Cowboys fan, like everything's going to be great. Dak Prescott's number one. I'm like, no, he's actually very depressed being a Cowboys fan, because as we've talked about many, many times, the narratives feel like they tend to repeat themselves here in Cowboys country.
They do. And unless you were alive before I was and saw the glory days, it's never all good in the Cowboys neighborhood. There's always something to complain about. Always.
And there's always something to talk about too, which is, again, no shortage here. Since we've last talked to you, since we've been gone, they're a little Kelly Clarkson for you. A lot has happened. The Cowboys schedule was released. What we're going to do later on, we're going to go game by game prediction. It's funny because like with the news cycle, like everyone did predictions, right? Well, we've kind of like passed the news cycle, or now giving predictions is almost like, it's kind of that old retro thing that's now cool. It's kind of the high-waisted jeans, of Cowboys news is us giving predictions now, but we're going to do it. We're going to rock it. We're going to go over some news and notes and stuff like that. There's been a lot of quotes said. Last Wednesday, we were at Cowboys OTAs for the first time as media. We were able to watch all practice. I've got some takeaways there. Specifically, Trey Lance was very interesting to me. We'll talk a little bit more about that why later. But yeah, let's kind of first go back to a couple things though. Danny, we just had Memorial Day. First off, happy Memorial Day to everyone. I hope you guys had a nice weekend out there. Salute our troops. Salute everyone that has given that full measure of devotion. We are very, very appreciative back home. So thank you. But Memorial Day is also the anniversary of the Bryce Harper Hunter Strickland mound charge fight. And I don't know if you guys remember this. This was the Giants versus Nationals at the time. Hunter Strickland on the mound for the Giants. Bryce Harper at the plate. Those two had beef for a while, and Hunter Strickland threw one a little bit too, he played that chin music a little too much, Dan, and kind of set Bryce Harper off to a point where he charged the mound And I think this is the more famous part about that is he took his helmet and just like, full crow hop, like threw it at Hunter Strickland, and then they started just brawling. Uh, Danny, why is that relevant to a Cowboys podcast though with us?
I don't even know if we've mentioned this before. I don't think we have because Joey had no idea what I was talking about. So one of my odd jobs that I've had was I was the bat boy for the Giants, not like the home team, but for the visiting team. So let's say the Boston Red Sox were in town. Like their team equipment guy would have a duffel bag full of like jerseys and stuff for me to wear. So I was like the Red Sox bat boy for the series. So I did that for like 3 years. You have to be at least 18 to do it. So everyone says, weren't you a little old to be a bat boy? I said, no, I wasn't actually. And so anyways, Nationals were in town. I had no idea that Strickland and Harper had beef, or I just forgot. I didn't really think anything of it. And so I remember it clear as day. I was hanging out on the top step of the dugout, and then Hunter Strickland buzzes one right at Harper's chin, and I was blocking the entrance to the field. So like the players had to go through me to get there. And I believe it was Daniel Murphy, first person out of the dugout after Harper charges a mound, just shoves me out of the way. Chaos ensues. And I'm just standing there like, well, what do I do now? Because these guys are just chucking blows on the field. And so I'm like, well, I guess I'll do my job. So I went and I picked up Bryce Harper's bat, middle of the brawl. Someone happened to catch a photo. There's like a huge brawl on the field, and I'm just over there picking the bat up, thinking I'm doing my job because I wanted to get the weapon out of the way. And it's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
So what's going through your mind? Like, I mean, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but is there a moment of like, shoot, dude, I mean, I've never been in an MLB brawl. Maybe I should just kind of hop in there and see what happens. I mean, you're not a small guy, Dan. So.
Well, what's funny about that is one of my best friends, who Joe knows very well, was the Giants bat boy. So he was across the field from me. So I thought about just going and kicking his ass during the fight. I'm like, do I just run over and start punching this guy? Like, what do we do? Luckily, I just kept it professional, and somebody got a great photo of, I believe it was Ryan Zimmerman. Yeah, well, Ryan Zimmerman.
Yeah, here's one of them. There's Bryce Harper, Zimmerman holding Harper, and there's Danny giving him side eye, just wondering if he should hop back into this fight and see what happens. But
it turned into a bunch of memes of like when someone like disses your hairstyle, like hold me back, bro, and I'm just in the background looking like an idiot. It was a good time.
There's a better shot too, because the funny thing about that is because I knew you had this job, and I was like watching the game. No, I wasn't watching the game, but I heard someone's like, dude, Bryce Harper fight. I'm like, okay, so he goes on Twitter, I'll check it out. But like as I'm checking out, part of me wonders like, man, I wonder if like Danny was at the game today. You know, that'd be kind of crazy. And as I'm like wondering that, because there's another shot and it's better, and it's from like the center field, and it's zoomed in on Harper, kind of like walking off like that. And all you see over Harper's shoulder is Danny just kind of like this, like ready to go, just in case. He's kind of like, you did put your hands up just like in the background just in case. And
you got to put the dukes up. Like what if Michael Morris or Jeff Samardzija come at me? I'm toast. I'm absolutely toast. I'm half the size of those guys.
Dude.
But I had a bat in my hand.
You did. Because you were doing your job. And I think that's the lesson of this entire story is when life is getting crazy, when chaos is all around you, sometimes the best thing to do is just do your damn job. And
just stay focused on the task at hand. All right?
And you did. But
moral of the story.
It created some funny memes. Joey, do you wish Danny would have just hopped in the fight and became like even more of a celebrity? I think he would have had that potential if he would have. But what are your reactions here in that story?
He probably wouldn't. He'd probably be more famous, more big time if that were the case. Now, you know,
I would have got fired.
Yeah, that too. Can I ask, how do you even get a bat boy job?
Well, long story short, my brother-in-law works for the Giants, and then I was coming back from Wisconsin at the time, and I was still going to school, looking to work part-time, and then he's like, hey, we need someone that knows baseball, that wants to work in the clubhouse, and like that won't be a super big like fanboy. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. And then ended up doing it for 3 years. my first year, this was after the Giants like dynasty had ended. So they were horrible all the years I was there. And my first year, the Cubs won the NLDS at the Giant Stadium. And so that was my first experience of postseason ball, and the Cubs just destroyed the clubhouse. You were walking through like a foot of beer on the carpet. It was disgusting. That's probably the reason I hate the Cubs as much as I do. Not a big Cubs fan.
Because part of you weren't only the bat boy, you also you were like the clubhouse manager too. Like I don't know if you're the manager, but you did a lot of stuff in the clubhouse though, right? Like you were like
you would
unpacking them.
Yeah, you get all their stuff packed, unpacked. If they need errands, you go and do stuff like that. If their family needs stuff, you're kind of a do it all.
Yeah, and if they ask you to get into a brawl, you just do it.
For the right amount of money, I would have knocked out the bat boy on the other side.
Did you see Bryce in the dugout after or in the clubhouse? Do you remember that at all? Was he fuming? Because he in that fight, he was kind of obviously he charged the mound, but he was almost more calm. Hunter Strickland, I was watching that fight again today. Hunter Strickland literally needed to be carried out by his legs by his team. Mac Williamson was holding his legs. It was crazy.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because that's one of the first things I was curious about after the game. So I go up to the clubhouse after the game, and he was super chill, as if nothing even happened. He wasn't even fazed by it. And I heard Strickland had to be held back from going in the tunnels to try and get into the Nationals clubhouse.
So Strickland didn't stop, basically.
No, he would have had to get through me to get to Bryce, though.
See, that was the line in the sand. You're like, I'm not going to get involved unless he's kind of coming to my clubhouse. No one comes into my clubhouse.
No one threatens my tip. Okay.
That's hilarious. All right, let's talk a little Cowboys. Kind of little news and notes things. We had OTAs last Wednesday, so we talked to a bunch of players, saw a bunch of stuff. The big quote that came out of OTAs was Dak Prescott's "I don't play for money," and I'll give you a longer quote. I don't play for money. He said, I've never cared for it, to be honest with you. I would give it up just to play this game. I allow that to the business people to say what it's worth, what they're supposed to give a quarterback of my play. This is kind of a condensed quote later on. He talked a lot about it. What they're supposed to give a quarterback my play, a person of my play, and a leader of my caliber. For me, it's about controlling what I can control and handle that part, and the rest will take care of itself. Another part, business is business. I'll leave it where it gets handled. Right now, it's about being my best for this team right now in this moment in OTAs and helping these guys out. I'm just focused on that. And I know my business will take care of itself. I've been in this situation before. So I'm experienced in just controlling what I can right now. So my takeaway, Danny, from that, and I wrote about it that day, we've talked a little bit about Dak Prescott. You can tell he's getting a little more confident with the business side of things. And it's pretty clear he has leverage, which we now know. And one thing he talked about is I've been in this situation before, which is obvious that in my opinion, he's called Jerry Jones's bluff, him and Todd France, and it worked out. So why wouldn't he do it again? That was my takeaway. Is Dak Prescott is vocally saying, "Hey, this is my court, and if you want to play in it. Otherwise, I'm going to invite the Raiders or the Giants to come play in it next year, and we'll make some money." But the quote about "I don't play for money" was the thing that went viral. Danny, what are your kind of reactions to that? Did you have a take on when you saw that quote? Did it mean anything to you as a fan? What did you think about all that?
It did. It's one of those things where I'll believe it when I see it. Especially the timing of the Jared Goff contract doesn't help out as well because, in my opinion, and I think in most people's opinions, he's a better quarterback than Jared Goff. So that's almost your starting point now. But to come out and say that I don't play for money, is he saying he's willing to play for less? Is he willing to take less money to build a better cast of characters around him? That remains to be seen, but it seems like Dallas has withheld from spending money because they're going to give him that big contract he deserves. So do I believe it? I mean, I want to, but at the end of the day, you have to look out for yourself. You have to take care of your family. You have to take care of, like I said, yourself first, and the team comes second. So he deserves every penny he's going to get. But to say that I don't play for money, It sounds good. It sounds good to the fans, to the ownership. Like he's playing for the right reasons. But at the end of the day, you need to make your money. You have to do what's best for yourself.
One thing as someone who was there to hear that quote, I didn't really, and maybe this is just me, like, I guess being around athletes and coaches who talk every single day for as part of their jobs, that maybe that's why I didn't like raise red flags really, to be honest with you, with me, is that like I think this is kind of my lesson to all fans and people who consume content. I think we should stop taking everything people say literally. Like, you got to remember, like, Danny, if I start asking you questions without you prepared, sometimes you're going to probably go to a cliche response, right? It's the natural human thing. Like, when you talk about, we're talking to Dak about business, about his contract, about why, whether or not his mind is on that or how does he separate it. Because one thing Dak's proven is really easy at, like, I'll let Todd France take care of that. Why is he easy at doing that? Because Todd France is really good at getting a good contract for him, as we've seen in the past. No tag, no trade clause. That's pretty well, suited for him. But I think sometimes when you're talking, and Dak's also a guy that is not like a short response guy. So when you're talking a lot, sometimes things just kind of come out. I think one Jerry Jones has shown to be the same kind of guy where he'll talk for 10 minutes and he'll throw in a little 10-second clip that becomes the hot viral headline. And I think my lesson for everyone, or my advice, is to stop taking everything so literally. It was kind of like the Jerry Jones thing. This kind of went viral too when he said, like, hey, we had the 24th worst record last year, so we're picking 24th. And obviously that's not how the NFL draft works. Clearly, that was also 5 seconds of a 10-minute thing that I think he just lost track and made a miscommunicated saying. So I didn't take it too literally. Obviously, it became kind of a poster thing for Jerry's rambling. So I guess that's my point. That was my big takeaway with the I don't play for money. Is Dak Prescott literally not going to play for cash? No, he's obviously going to get paid a lot of money. But to your point, I like the idea of, hey, Dak, will you then take a Brady deal per chance, and will you kind of open up things so that CeeDee and Micah can get paid what they're worth? My hot take, no. I
Well,
don't think that.
that's kind of the question you have to ask yourself, like from Dak Prescott's perspective, is do you want to break the bank? Do you want to set the market for what quarterbacks are going to make? Or do you want to go get a ring? Because in my opinion, if you pay him that money, you've now handcuffed your franchise. Mahomes can do it because he's Mahomes. I don't think Dak Prescott's Mahomes. No one's going to say that he is. But if you take that contract, you're really hand tying your front office as to what they can build around you. You can't make CeeDee Lamb the highest paid receiver. You can't make Dak or Micah Parsons the highest paid linebacker. It's just not possible. It's not in the books unless you're Howie Roseman, who figures that out every year.
Yeah, no, Howie. It's so funny because we give Howie a lot of credit. Obviously, they won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles, and we talked a little bit about maybe how a little overblown some of the praise is. But whether it's Howie Roseman or Parag Marathe, John Lynch and the 49ers, or the Detroit Lions right now, I wrote a column during the time off from this podcast about why the Detroit Lions are having the offseason that Cowboys fans wished they could have had, where they were able to kind of fill some needs, but also re-sign Penei Sewell, re-sign Amon-Ra St. Brown, re-sign Jared Goff, which kind of is a good segue for how much money we could be talking about for a Dak Prescott deal. The annual average value of salary, which can be a little misleading, but it's kind of good for these kind of conversations when we're talking about like guys that are making a lot of money at the top end of their positions. The leader right now in the clubhouse is $55 million per year to Joe Burrow, who's on a 5-year, $275 million contract, which when I see those numbers, man, just makes my eyes pop. Obviously, it's the going rate. It's just still crazy. Jared Goff next at $53 million per year. Justin Herbert, 52.5. Lamar Jackson, 52. Jalen Hurts, 51. Then you got Kyler Murray at 46.1. Deshaun Watson at 46, and that contract doesn't look good. And then tied for 8, you have Patrick Mahomes and Kirk Cousins at $45 million a year. So one thing we know about the Dak Prescott deal, whenever he does sign an extension, kind of feels like $55 million is the floor for an annual average salary.
That's a scary thought that your floor is $55 million.
But consider this, Dan. His cap hit next year is already $40 million, whether or not he's on the roster at all. So
I know, but it's hard to say that the Cowboys are one or two pieces away from Super Bowl. They're close, but how much can you go out and add to this team when you have the highest paid quarterback in the league? You just can't. And so yes, he deserves his contract, but if he's gonna stand behind what he says, where he doesn't play for money, do you think he really does want to set the market? Why make a comment like that if you don't plan on setting the market for a quarterback?
Well, because it's a throwaway comment, in my opinion. It's irrelevant. It's a headline.
Well, you're a reporter. I'm a fan. We take that stuff to heart.
That's true. Like, that's a really good point. And that's why it's honestly interesting. That's why I love this dynamic of you and I on this podcast. Cause like, I disregarded it. I was like, all right, he's throwing it away. It's a throwaway comment. Meanwhile, I go on Twitter the next day. What do you mean Dak Prescott said he doesn't play for money? Then play for free.
Yeah. And looking at the highest paid quarterbacks in the order that they're paid, it doesn't necessarily correlate to who, in my opinion, is the best in that order at all. And when we were in Bend, we were at a brewery, and I was like thrown to a pack of wolves defending Dak Prescott.
Me too.
And
Me too.
The amount, you had my back, but the amount of shit I was getting from these people saying that I said he's top 3. I had a couple beers on board. He's top 5 at worst. And I stood behind that. And if you look at the quarterbacks, top 5, he's going to make at least $50 million. There's no way around that.
Zero way around that.
I just wish we could have recorded that conversation, because I believe it was Trevor Sickham of PFF comes out like 2 days later and says Dak Prescott is his number 1 quarterback in the NFC. I said, thank you. A man that knows what he's talking about, not just me.
And I think in the NFC, it comes down to Jalen Hurts, Brock Purdy, Matt Stafford, and Dak Prescott, which among those 4, I think you have an argument theoretically for all, to be honest.
I don't understand I understand him having Dak Prescott number 1, as he should. But Matt Stafford number 2, not on board with. I don't believe that one.
I mean, Stafford's good, man. But he's getting up there.
He's getting up there. He's like a statue in the pocket.
For all 4 of those guys, there's an argument against him, right? Like,
of course, yeah.
Like a significant one, in my opinion. Like Stafford, getting older, kind of an injury risk. Maybe because I mean, remember the rumors that he even might have like considered retirement at some point because of the shoulder or the arm. So that's a concern. Brock Purdy, obviously shorter, Mr. Irrelevant, hasn't done it for very long. Has every weapon in the armory that you wish you could have.
Product of the Shanahan system.
Yeah, that's an argument against Call of Duty. His Call of Duty loadout screen is like the envy of every single player of all time, where it's like, we got every single weapon we ever could want.
I'm a full believer that you could put Jeff Garcia in that offense right now, and he would be just as good as Brock Purdy is.
Well, Jeff Garcia
current day.
Good.
Current day
Jeff Garcia. Oh.
That's what I think of Brock Purdy.
That's a bold take. Maybe we should get Jeff Garcia on the pod to defend that, because I think he might agree with you.
If it was bold, I would have said Tim Rattay, but I said Jeff Garcia.
Is Tim Rattay? He got fired last year as the Bills OC, right? Yeah.
No. That wasn't Tim Rattay. That was this is bad. I should know it. Ken Dorsey.
Oh, it was another 49ers ex-49ers quarterback. Oh, Rattay's he's at Oklahoma State. Okay, he's a QB coach at Oklahoma State.
Yes.
And then obviously Jalen Hurts, kind of just, is he? Eagles fans will hate this. How good of a quarterback is he? Or is he just clutch and runs the ball really well?
There's times where he looks like the best quarterback in the NFL. It pains me to say it, but he does. He shows flashes. But then he has some games where he just lays a complete egg. And I don't know. I don't think he's the best quarterback in the NFC. I don't think he's the best quarterback in the NFC East.
Yeah, well,
That's just my opinion.
The thing about Jalen Hurts, too, the one thing I'll give him a lot of credit for, that dude is clutch. Like, I swear, every time I turn on a game and it's like, oh, hey, they need a big throw here on 4th and 18, down 14 to even have a chance in this game, and throws one up to A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith, who makes an incredible play. And next thing you know, they're off and running and they complete a comeback. There was a couple games last year where I was like, oh, they're going to lose that first one or that second one. And then they just went down in flames, the Eagles, man. That was a wild second half for them.
But did you not enjoy watching that? It was the most enjoyable demise in sports history. Just watching watching Nick Sirianni's smug face on the sideline brought so much joy to me. I got so happy watching the Eagles lose.
Objective reporter here, reporting for duty. But it was wild. Like, at the very least, objectively, it was like, oh my God. Like, watching, and this is no shade on James Conner, because I think he's still a really good running back, right? But watching James Conner just like, we're talking like Marshawn Lynch, LeGarrette Blount, and, you know, like Jerome Bettis, like, get off me, boy, like, kind of running. I was like, geez, like, okay, James Conner.
Mm-hmm. Loved it. Love to see it.
Quick to where Dak Prescott might be among the top quarterbacks. He's not above Mahomes. He's not above Josh Allen. He's not above healthy Joe Burrow. He's not above Lamar Jackson. So that's 4. So now you're talking he's in the CJ Stroud, Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, Matt Stafford, Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins tier. I mean, obviously those tiers can be different, but those are the other guys kind of left in that discussion.
Yeah, and that's kind of where it goes. Like, yes, it's fantasy football, but it has some relevance when it comes to drafting quarterbacks. That's kind of where he falls in that tier. Is kind of with like the Kirk Cousins, the Staffords, the Goffs. But I think he belongs right up there with the top 5. I really do.
Would you take CJ Stroud over him right now, though?
That's what I was going to say. You can't anoint CJ Stroud this second coming of Jesus at the quarterback position after 1 year. I mean, yes, he's done it, but you ever heard of a sophomore slump?
I have heard of a sophomore slump.
Because we might find out, because I think the Texans could be one of the most overhyped teams going into 2025 or 2024, the next season.
I mean, it's on him.
They're just like everyone's favorite team all of a sudden. Yes, they look good. I bought it.
I was going to say, you bought a jersey, didn't you?
I was going to. After that Green Bay loss, I almost bought a Texans jersey. But I think we have to tamper our expectations here. He's good. He is very good. But to say he's in the same talks as the top 5, let's give it one more year.
Joey, what do you think about that? As someone who writes about the Texans.
I never answered your question, sorry. Dak Prescott over CJ Stroud. Give me Dak Prescott.
I say right now, I agree with that, Danny. And
we agree?
Whoa!
I know, it's crazy. Would have thunk it.
Pigs flying.
But I also agree with your whole, like, you know, we need to see it for another year. He had arguably the best rookie quarterback season of all time. Better than Dak Prescott, better than Andrew Luck. There was a point where he was in the MVP discussion. I don't think there was ever a point where people thought he was going to like actually win it, but he was in the discussion. And like you said, the team has a lot of hype. I don't know if it's overhype. You know, the D'Amico Ryans thing, it seems like players really, really like D'Amico Ryans and really want to play for him, but we'll see. I think CJ Stroud is already a top 10 quarterback. I think it'd be a little silly to call him a top 5 already.
I think I agree with you. The one question is, like, if we were doing like the, hey, let's start the league over and you got to take a quarterback, that would get interesting. Whether you take 30-year-old Dak or 22-year-old CJ Stroud.
I think all 32 teams take Stroud.
That's what I think too.
Yes, but if you rephrase that and said, I have to win a Super Bowl this year, I think more teams would take Dak Prescott.
Yeah, which comes down to who's the better quarterback, right? I mean, imagine would you take that skill group over the Cowboys skill group? That's an interesting question with Joe Mixon and Joe Mixon.
This might be a hot take, and it is a hot take, but how much better
this is my ASMR match lighting for the hot take.
How much better is current Joe Mixon, than Zeke? He's better. I'm not saying Zeke is better, but is he really? You watched Joe Mixon. I had a great view, and I went to the Niners-Bengals game when he torched the Niners last year. That was great. But how much more does Joe Mixon really offer you than current day Zeke?
I think more.
Sizably more?
I think there's a significant more significantly.
I'm not saying he's better. I'm not saying Zeke is Joe Mixon, but I don't think the gap is honestly that far. But to answer your question, I will take the Cowboys skill position players.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a really interesting discussion. Joey, you're shaking your head. I think you'd rather take Houston's.
It is tough. I will say this for Danny. It is because Ferguson has a lot of upside as like a really good tight end, and then CeeDee
He's
Lamb.
way better. He's way better than Dalton Schultz.
No, I'm not saying he's not better than Dalton Schultz. That is not like Ferguson has the potential to be like one of the best tight ends in football. But then you got 31-year-old Brandon Cooks. There seems to be a little smoke around Jalen Tolbert being really good. But the Texans are just so much more well-rounded. And I think it really depends on how you feel, how much you think Stephon Diggs has left, and how much potential you think Tank Dell has.
I think their 1-2 punch of Diggs and Nico Collins, you could argue, is probably better than CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks. Potentially,
I'd rather
tough,
have
dude.
CeeDee. And
I think CeeDee is the number one out of all of those options. I think, to be honest with you, CeeDee has a very good argument for being the number 2 receiver in the NFL behind Tyreek.
why not number one? Why not number one?
Behind Tyreek Hill.
If you're telling me you have to throw the ball up to win the Super Bowl, one final play, you'd rather have Tyreek going up for it than CeeDee Lamb.
I think there's a 5-yard gap between Tyreek Hill and his defender. That's the difference.
Let's just say we're on the 20-yard line.
You're moving the goalposts here, Dan. This is ridiculous. How many scenarios do we need to go through? I would say, would you not take Tyreek Hill over CeeDee Lamb?
No.
Age be darned. You have to win the Super Bowl for one season. Tyreek Hill or CeeDee Lamb?
Give me this guy. CeeDee Lamb all day.
I mean, it's not the crazy. I think CeeDee Lamb is fantastic, which brings us to our next point.
We already have a Tyreek Hill. Time out. We already have Tyreek Hill.
What, Terp?
Cavante Turpin. Next topic.
All right, well, let's talk about that a little bit, actually. Segue. We got to make like a sound effect for the segue. Like, maybe we have like just like a like the old Simpsons voice, like it goes like segue or something like that. We're gonna segue. CeeDee Lamb not at OTAs, which is not shocking whatsoever. They're voluntary. They are not. There's no financial penalty for not going. So CeeDee Lamb, in the midst of contract negotiation extension talks, is doing the right thing and sticking to business and working out with his cousin Keon Coleman instead. Which is, that's what CeeDee Lamb was supposed to do there. Because he's not there, though, well, one, let's just say that the Cowboys are not worried about that. Dak, Mike McCarthy, Brandon Cooks, they all talked about it, and they said, yeah, CeeDee Lamb's doing his thing. We know he's not here, but he's fine. Same offense from last year. He had that pretty dialed down with Dak. No worries. So we're just awaiting that CeeDee Lamb contract, which is going to be very, very expensive. That's another one where we're talking about floor, $30 million average annual per year. AJ Brown just got 32, so do with that with what you will. But because CeeDee Lamb's not there, that means that there's other players that have the chance to shine at OTAs. And let's kind of go down the list a little bit here from what I saw. And the first guy that was the most impressive guy, I thought the entire OTA practice, was Brandon Cooks. I think people forget that Brandon Cooks sprained his MCL in week 1 last season, against the Giants. And then he came back, he missed 1 game. And then he was back the whole season, right? But it's interesting because you kind of wonder, was he healthy at all the whole season? Or was that something where, he was he played every single game, but he was kind of a little bit banged up a little bit. Brandon Cooks didn't have the 1,000-yard receiver season that we're used to, but man, I'll tell you, Joey, that he looked fresh at OTAs. And this is obviously overhyped season, but there was a difference. And we had seen some practices kind of 3/4 speed last year. And so maybe that's part of it, is that we never saw Brandon Cooks running 100% during the season last year. But Brandon Cooks looked fresh. He looked bouncy. He looked fast. He connected on a 50-yard touchdown with Dak Prescott. He burned Nashawn Wright by probably 5 yards. Like, it was not even close. He had an incredible over-the-shoulder leaping grab that Dak Prescott threw a nice ball to. He just looked really, really fresh and really, really fast. I think that's something that Cowboys fans, in my opinion, could be kind of excited about. His quote was, "I'm ready to rock. Don't get me wrong. I'm a leader, but at the same time, I'm a playmaker." So no no shade there. Danny, when you hear Brandon Cooks looking like old Brandon Cooks speed wise, what do you think? And what do you think? Do you think there's maybe merit to the idea that, like, maybe he wasn't the healthiest last season, and now he's entering on a kind of fresh slate here in his second year in Dallas?
Yeah, I think it was pretty obvious he wasn't at full health last year, and it wasn't the best Brandon Cooks I've ever seen. I was a little disappointed. He was clutch. If he needed to make a play, I felt pretty confident that he could make a play for you. But yeah, we need someone to step up as that number 2, because you can't throw to. I mean, you could, but you can't throw to CeeDee Lamb 50 times a game. You have to spread the ball out. So to just kind of diversify the offense a little more between Ferguson, CeeDee Lamb, and then if you mix Brandon Cooks in as a threat, maybe it can open up that run game a little more. So that is good news to hear from Cowboys camp.
Yeah, and I think his veteran leadership is kind of, at this point, also one of the biggest things that he brings to the table. Kind of worth noting that he's also in a contract year, so he's got things to prove this year from a playmaking standpoint. Whether it's for Dallas or for another team, it feels like Brandon Cooks has been on half the teams in the league, so maybe there's a chance to extend that a little bit.
Did you get a chance to see Flournoy by chance at camp?
Did see Flournoy, yeah.
You did?
Yes.
Okay. How did he look?
He looked good. He kind of. It's interesting with Flournoy because, like, you looked at the measurables and all that stuff, and everyone's talking about, he's Bruce Feldman's freak, and like, I thought that, like, in terms of like 40 time and stuff, it wasn't like the most kind of gobsmack impressive thing in the world. Obviously, he was fast and athletic, cool. He moves well. I think he's a guy in like an intermediate tree that could be that's where probably he's going to make his money. Talking slants, kind of zigs, or ins and outs and drags and stuff like that. Maybe digs and stuff like that. That's something I think he'd be good at. To be honest with you, like he was with the second team a lot and like wasn't like a huge like standout. But because CeeDee Lamb's not there, there were other guys that had a chance to stand out. And the big one we're talking about is Jalen Tolbert, that everyone's been kind of talking about. And it's more, in my opinion, the conversation on Jalen Tolbert is more about two things. One, the opportunity he has to be the true number 3 receiver. And obviously he was on Michael Gallup's tail in the beginning. And then clearly he had obviously overtaken him by the end of the season. So that's one thing. He has an opportunity now to be the full number 3 the full time. The other thing that kind of stuck out to me about Jalen Tolbert was just kind of the look of Jalen Tolbert. He looked bigger. Obviously, he's kind of been more of a, on the lighter side of the receiver since he got in from South Alabama. But now entering year 3, he looked a little bit bigger. He also was walking with more confidence. He was louder. Like he talked a lot to us about like, hey, I have more confidence. This is the most confident I've ever been. He worked exclusively with Brandon Cooks in Oregon for a while. They worked out together, just like Brandon Cooks used to work with Steve Smith. He looks more confident. So I think that he's a guy that's like ready to approach the opportunity to be the true number 3 receiver. And to be honest with you, the Cowboys need him to be.
I feel like he was like the forgotten man throughout the draft, like the whole draft process, because teams were mocking receivers to the Cowboys in the first round, which I thought was insane. That it's CeeDee Lamb and then who else? Well, Brandon Cooks is getting up there, but he's still got a lot of miles on the tires. And I think people were just forgetting about Jalen Tolbert, and he showed a lot of flashes last year. We need a little bit more consistency, maybe some better hands going into this year. But I think there's no reason why we shouldn't believe that he could take that next step up and be a solid number 3, if not surpass Cooks as the number 2 option on this team.
The thing, too, with Jalen Tolbert, I think people need to kind of wrap their head around is he's the team's third receiver entering the season, right? And last season he was like splitting 13 reps with Michael Gallup. That doesn't mean you're going to catch 85 balls a year being the team's number 3 receiver, especially when one CeeDee Lamb gets 140 targets or, I think it was like 100, or he had 136 catches. So how many targets did he have last year? So long story short, I think all Cowboys fans can ask of Jalen Tolbert is to be a guy that's ready to go when his moment's called. And I thought last year when his moment was called, he was ready. I thought against Philly, the first time, 181 targets for CeeDee Lamb. So, that not a lot of balls to go around, for that offense. So elsewhere. But I thought Jalen Tolbert kind of showed that he was ready to kind of get open when needed and make catches when needed. I thought Philadelphia was the first time he really showed himself to do that. I think that he's going to have obviously the best opportunity to take the number 3 receiver role. Some other guys that stood out to me in OTAs, because without CeeDee Lamb, you're going to look at more receivers. The 2 guys that very not on the radar of anyone, but kind of stuck out to me was Jalen Cropper, the undrafted free agent last year out of Fresno State, who had a really good career at Fresno State. Surprisingly went undrafted, was on the practice squad the entire season. The Cowboys never got off it, didn't play, but looked pretty good in OTAs, made some catches, looked good with Trey Lance, who I want to talk about later too. And the other guy was actually Tyron Billy Johnson, who's 28 now. Like, it's kind of a sneaky veteran practice squad guy, but he looked really good for someone in terms of like standing out, I thought. He made a lot of catches with the 2s. He even rotated with the 1s at certain points. And obviously there's a big rotation right now because of, numbers and OTAs and just CeeDee Lamb being gone and blah, 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 blah. But that was a guy that looked confident, could handle things. And I think those 2 guys, in terms of, hey, the Cowboys need depth at receiver. And without Michael Gallup, you got a lot of young guys, who would step up hypothetically if injuries were to happen. I think those 2 guys are 2 to keep an eye on as potentially 2 guys that could eventually make a difference if they were called upon.
Yeah, Cropper is one of those guys I mentioned on one of the earlier episodes when we were talking about pre-draft as to if the Cowboys don't take a receiver, what are the options going to be in-house? And like you said, he's a guy that spent the entire year on the practice squad, didn't get to see much of him. I don't know how much he flashed in preseason last year, but he'll be an interesting name to watch going into this preseason as one of those guys that could fill out potentially the back end of your 53 as a special teams ace. It's possible. It's a long shot to crack that 53, but definitely a name to watch. Moreno Cropper.
Yeah, and then Flournoy, obviously, and then Jalen Brooks, too. Jalen Brooks obviously proved himself on special teams, I thought, last season when called upon. He's another guy that will have that race to 4, 5, and 6 we're talking about now. Because, we'll talk more about it when come training camp, is how many receivers are going to make this 53-man roster. And you start kind of like doing the math, and you're like, okay, well, if 1, 2, 3 is pretty settled, who's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? How does the rest of it stack up? And I think it's pretty competitive. I think it'll be for that. Obviously, the other one I didn't mention, who I swear just keeps getting forgotten, unless you're comparing him to Tyreek Hill, is Kevontae Turpin, who also, dude, looked good, man. He made this one, or it was on air, so take that for what it's worth. But like, it was the same route he ran when he had the touchdown against San Francisco. And him and Dak connected on another corner route, and just the timing of it was really nice. And I don't know, just a guy who has a lot of ability, and you kind of wonder when that will actually kind of take a bigger role on offense. So
it'll be interesting to see how they fill out the back end of this 53 with, like you mentioned, the depth at receiver, how many they're going to choose to carry or suit up on game day. And also the tight end position, I think, is pretty deep in Dallas. How many are they going to carry? How many are going to make this team? Is this undrafted rookie out of Minnesota, Span Ford, is he someone that cracks the 53? And if he does, who does he boot off? Is Peyton Henrich shut out of a job? It's possible. I think your number 1 tight end is obviously locked in. It's Jake Ferguson, but maybe he could be that number 2. Maybe Schoonmaker doesn't take that next step up. We don't know.
Yeah, and that's segue alert. Schoonmaker did not practice, and Hendershot really didn't practice. He wasn't in street clothes like Scooney was, but well, and Scoon had a jersey on too, but he wasn't practicing, right? And Hendershot had to
Scooney.
help. Yeah, Scooney, Scooney Maker Mark. But Hendershot wasn't practicing either. Was obviously hurt a lot last season. Barely played. Not a great year for Peyton, and now he's kind of on the radar of like, hey, is he going to make the team or not? Schoonmaker obviously has a lot to prove heading into season 2. You brought Brevin Spanford. It's so wild sometimes when you're just out there, and Brevin Spanford is like cut, right? He's not like bulky. He's like a cut 6'7", but he's 6'7". And then you see him next to guys like Tyler Guyton and Tyler Smith, and you're like, oh my God, you're the same height, like, or you're taller. And he's someone that moves well. And also considering the money the Cowboys gave him to win a bidding war to get him, would not be surprised to see him make this roster. The other X factor in the tight end room, Dan, and you probably know more about this than I do because I didn't start till week 1 last year. John Stevens is on track to, be healthy again by training camp. He also looks really cut, ready to go. Him and DeMarvion Overshown, obviously, you could tell have hit upper body a lot without the ability to do legs. So they look good. Would you be surprised, Dan, if your starting tight end room week 1 is Jake Ferguson, Schoonmaker, Brevin Spanford, and John Stevens? I wouldn't be.
No, not at all. Do you think they'll shoot up 4 tight ends on game day?
Maybe not but that might be a case where you want to preserve one of those guys on the 53, even if they're not in the 46. Keep them.
Yeah.
Because feels like a guy like John Stevens, if he had another impressive preseason and you cut him, I don't know if you're getting him back.
He's more of a receiving threat versus Spanford's more your traditional inline blocking tight end. So the kind of counter of their skill sets, it'd be nice to have both if you could. But again, 53 sounds like a lot of people, but it's really not that many spots on a roster.
No, it gets tight really quick. Another takeaway, we're kind of just run through takeaways from OTAs and talking about which I'm enjoying. The defensive line room is thin. There's not a lot of depth there. There was a point where we looked over because Mozzie Smith was out and Osa Odigizua was out. Osa was there. He just didn't practice. Nothing to be concerned about. Just kind of a small thing. Just getting treatment. Anyways, but you looked over at one point. It was like there was like 2 dudes in like the interior defensive line room. And obviously they got guys like Marshawn Nealon and who are now at defensive end, but like interior defensive line in particular is very, very thin. That's why if the money's there, you call Calais Campbell, in my opinion, and you make that happen because it's thin.
You would be in favor of bringing in Calais Campbell for year, 17?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I like that move. I think this is, like we've said before, this is going to be Mozzie's year to sink or swim. And so I want to see him on the field as much as possible to pair him with Osa Odigizua. But I guess we do need some more depth because they do like to rotate those guys and keep them fresh. Chauncey Golson, was Chauncey Golson working with the interior?
He was working with he was working with the interior, which is interesting. I don't hate that, but I also don't think that's his main spot.
No, he just seems a little smaller to me to be an interior guy.
Yeah.
And with the biggest flaw being the run defense being the biggest issue, I don't know if he's who you want on the interior of your D-line.
No, I agree with you. So that was interesting. I also think obviously they're going to Trayvon Diggs back, but another early kind of storyline for me is I think they need your boy Kalen Carson to be good this season, or to play. Depth at corner is not, and we talked about that too. I thought we thought that they needed to draft a guy. They did. Obviously, Stephon Gilmore's still out there. Maybe June 1, more money gets open, and Brandon Cook says he still talks to Stephon Gilmore every day. So maybe that comes back around, but I think that they're going to need some dudes to step up in their corner room.
Yeah, I think this will be a big year for Eric Scott as well. Again, tamper your expectations, 6th-round pick, but it is a 6th-round pick that they traded up to get. So I'm assuming that was the Dan Quinn pound the table for guy. So it's time to see something from him. And Nahshon Wright, to be honest, haven't really been too impressed with what I've seen from him on the field yet. This is a make or break year for him too. So the back end of that cornerback room leaves a little to be desired. And I think there is a spot for Kalen Carson to make an impact this year on that team.
Yeah, Nahshon Wright was the guy starting opposite of Deron Bland with the ones.
That scares me.
Yeah, I mean, but obviously Trayvon Diggs and stuff like that. Nahshon Wright was kind of the go-to guy when, they needed someone to step in last year when either Gilmore got hurt. He got kind of picked on by Brandon Cooks. Obviously, we just talked about how good Brandon Cooks looked, and that's not the best matchup for him. Is a speed guy like that, but it kind of showed.
Did you happen to see if Marquise Bell was working with the safety group?
Safeties. Yep, he was back with the safeties. Yeah, which is, I think, very encouraging for Cal. I think Marquise Bell is someone that has a lot of talent, and I think he showed a lot in the running game last year when he made quick decisions and was able to cut through people. And I think that's something that translates well to safety, pursuit and angles and stuff like that.
And I 100% agree with that. He's someone that in open space he's going to make more tackles than not, but I would prefer him to not be in the box like he was last year. It just doesn't really set him up for success. So I'll be intrigued to see how they manage to get Malik Hooker, Donovan Wilson, and Bell on the field at the same time, if they even plan on getting them on the field at the same time. But that's a good problem to have. And
go ahead. Sorry.
Is Kearse still a free agent that you know of?
Who?
J-Ron Kearse?
Yeah, still a free agent. Yeah.
That's surprising.
Yeah, I do think you're going to see another wave of free agency happen soon, though, right before training camp, and
I feel like that's usually where Jerry does his hunting at.
Yeah, that's what I was going to tell you. Some defensive linemen still available, interior guys. Raheem Nunes-Roches from the Giants, Hassan Ridgeway, Lawrence Guy, Al Woods, Linval Joseph, Ross Blacklock, Levi Bell. I mentioned Calais Campbell, kind of a slot as a DN there, but nothing crazy jumping at you there.
No, I feel like almost certain that one of those guys will end up on Dallas's roster come like week 8 or 9, like kind of like Carl Davis did.
Yeah,
when they got him from New England.
Some breaking news is tangentially related to the Cowboys. The Texans agreed to do a new extension with Nico Collins, who we were just talking about. 3-year extension that's going to pay him an average of $24 million a year for Nico. Does that do anything at all in your opinion for CeeDee Lamb? My opinion is it just kind of reinforces that CeeDee Lamb's floor is 32 million. If a guy like Nico's getting 24, who's obviously had a fantastic season last year, and that seems like a good deal for Houston moving forward, but interesting.
It does seem like a good deal, but yeah, like you said, it just seems like the price is going up and up and up, and it sounds like he's going to wait to see what Justin Jefferson gets on his deal. But in my opinion, they're very comparable players. CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson.
I feel like those two are just like in a duel with each other, like staring each other down. Like, no, you move. No, you move. You move. Do they have the same agent? Am I tripping? They might. Maybe.
They might. We might have to refer to the all-seeing Third Eye Raven for that information.
Yeah, who's already probably working on a Nico Collins extension and story as we speak. Yep, there it is. All right. Let's switch things up a little bit, and then we'll finish with Trey Lance. Danny, let's go down the schedule. Okay. My official prediction is online for the boys. I have them winning 12 games again, which I think could be a little. I think that's probably the higher end of that, but of that projection, I could see him losing some of those games I gave him. But let's go down the schedule, and you say win or loss or whatever. Okay, so week 1 at Cleveland. Oh, go ahead.
I'll preface this because it could be easy as a fan to say, your team's going to win every game. No. I've been a Cowboys fan long enough. I can kind of almost forecast the games they're going to lay an egg, where Dallas is going to be Dallas. And unfortunately, in recent years, it's been against good teams. So I think that trend, unfortunately, might continue here with these predictions. We'll see.
So here, let's do this too. Like, we'll do how about this? You'll give your prediction, but we'll also give like a danger level, right? Like a fire level today. Like, is it no risk, or like Smokey the Bear says they could lose this one.
Okay.
So all right, week 1 at Cleveland. I think this is a Smokey the Bear. Keep your wits about you. Make sure you're not, only you're responsible for forest fires, preventing them, right? Like,
yep.
I had them winning this one because, to be honest with you, I think it comes down to quarterbacks, and I don't think the world of Deshaun Watson. What do you think?
Fire danger high, very high. But again, it comes down to quarterbacks in this league, and Deshaun Watson has really shown nothing since being in Cleveland. He's given me no reason to believe he's going to show up this time. And I just feel like historically this is one of those games where Cowboys just show up. So do you want score predictions, or is that a little too?
That's too much. Just double loss.
Cowboys 1-0.
No. I agree with you there. Again, well, if they lose, wouldn't be shocked. But I thought the Giants game on the road was going to be tough for them last year. Obviously, the Giants ended up being pretty bad, but that was 40-0. So maybe the Cowboys come prepared for week 1. All right. Mm-hmm. Home opener against the New Orleans Saints. Fire danger low.
I agree. I'm not a Derek Carr believer. I don't think the Saints are a playoff team next year. Not a bad team by any means, but probably right around 500, somewhere around there. I believe this is the home opener, correct, for the Cowboys?
Correct.
I think the fans show up, pack that place. The Cowboys put on a good show, and they take care of business. Danger low.
Low, and they're 2-0. Okay. Home against the Baltimore Ravens. And I was thinking about this, like, when, obviously we knew the teams before, when would you want the Ravens at home, right? And part of me thinks early's better. He says kind of, or maybe it doesn't matter. I think later in the season, if you're a little bit run down on defense, Lamar Jackson being healthy and running could run all over you, especially indoors. I think if your defense is kind of healthy, that this might be the best chance to try and stop Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, who I keep forgetting that they have. Fire danger very high with this one. Dan, what do you think?
I agree. The Cowboys fan in me wants to say that they're going to start 3-0 and beat the Ravens. The realist in me believes that Lamar Jackson is going to come to Dallas. He's probably going to take care of business. I'm going to say Cowboys lose a close one here, 2-1 to start the year.
I think, though, with that 3-game stretch, I think 2-1 is maybe what you should. That's solid if you're a Cowboys fan. If they get out of there 2-1, because whether they lose to Cleveland and then beat the Ravens at home, because they don't lose at home very often unless it's in the playoffs. I think 2-1 is a solid start for them. So I agree with you there.
100%.
At New York Giants, fire risk low.
I agree. I think the Cowboys just kind of have the Giants number right now. Brian Dable just can't figure out the intricate puzzle that is the Cowboys. They showed it last year. They embarrassed the Giants last year, quite frankly. It was embarrassing if you're a Giants fan. Danger low, Cowboys roll, 3-1 start.
Yeah, Thursday Night Football too. I'm not putting too much stock into that on a short week. No. I think they take care of business against the Giants. But they get it. So once you have a short week, you get a little break there. You get like a mini bye, and then you head back to Pittsburgh, the homeland of one Mike McCarthy for I believe Sunday Night Football. The
ketchup bottle. Are they still Heinz Field?
I think it's still Heinz Field. And it'll always be Heinz Field in my heart. So Sunday Night Football against the Steelers. Fire at Pittsburgh. Fire danger pretty high, I think.
First off, I am pumped to watch this game. Sunday Night Football, Cowboys Steelers. Are you kidding me?
Is this the 70s in the Super Bowl? Come on. This is
It doesn't get better than this. I am
Danny,
fired up.
is Sarah Grad Lynn Swan out there? Like, come on.
I'm just praying I'm off work that day. The Steelers are a tough team this year because the NFL starts at the quarterback position, and they have two. Or do they have one? Do they have none? Whatever your opinion on Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are. This is tough. I like what they did on defense. They've always had a good defense, and they just got even better. Their offense doesn't scare anybody. I don't think that's going to change. Give me the Cowboys. Give me the Cowboys here.
Wow. I think this is a fire danger pretty high one, though, Dan.
I feel pretty good about it.
This is like fire danger where the wind is a factor, right? Where it's like, it's not like that. It's not that hot. It's not that dry. But shoot, the wind is a factor. We don't know what the wind is actually going to do, up there in the mountains. So you kind of wonder, like, okay, in this analogy, Russell Wilson is the wind / Justin Fields. Like, what if Russell Wilson ends up being kind of decent away from Sean Payton again? Like, what if he ends up being solid for a team that went to the playoffs last year without much QB assistance at all? You know what I mean?
Russell Wilson's he's cooked. Justin Fields might be the starter of that team come week 6.
Well, that means the Cowboys would put him in, put Russell Wilson's career kind of in the coffin there, if that was the case. So
if I was a Steelers fan, I'd rather see Justin Fields under center. Just my opinion.
I would too, unless Russell Wilson refines some of the stuff that made him so good. Okay, let's move on.
4-1.
4-1 Cowboys hosting the Detroit Lions. Dan, we know how last year went. Here, everyone, do your reporting eligible. Everyone, report eligible. Dan Skipper. Yeah, dude. In my opinion, this might be the highest home fire danger game for the Cowboys.
Highest home game. Yeah, we'll see. We'll go through the schedule, but Detroit's a good team, man. They are a damn good football team,
and they got better.
And they've only gotten better. The secondary was their Achilles heel last year, and they've gotten significantly better at that position. They're going to come off pit. They're coming into Dallas pissed off. They think they should have beat the Cowboys last year. Football games don't come down to one play. Sorry, Lions fans, they just don't. It's a culmination of 4 quarters. That play did not decide the game. This is going to be a high-scoring game. Whatever the over is, I would take it. Give me the Cowboys in a shootout here. 5-1 start.
I love how he prefaces by saying, like, I'm a little biased as a Cowboy fan, but they're going to lose some games. Meanwhile, every potential pitfall, he's like, and they win in a shootout, or hey, they win a close one. I think they lose this game. I think the revenge factor. I think, to be honest with you, that the Lions were already like licking their chops at a potential NFC Championship or NFC and divisional round game against the Cowboys back at AT&T Stadium again.
Careful what you wish for.
There you go. All right,
the money.
Week. Oh no, go ahead. The money.
No, I was going to say the contract goes to Goff's head. He has a horrible year. Cowboys win.
I mean, those Marin Catholic guys with money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right, bye week. And then the Cowboys have plenty of rest and time to prepare for the San Francisco 49ers on the road again. Four straight year these two teams play. Third straight? Yeah, third straight in San Francisco. Danny, this is the highest fire risk away game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've seen this show play out too many times. I've been at every single game in the last 3 years when the Cowboys have come here, and it's ended the same way every single time. Although I forgot what year it was. It was a regular season game, and the Cowboys absolutely blew out the Niners in Levi's. And you gave me your seats because I was sitting in your seats for this game.
Oh, I don't. Yeah,
this was. It was prime Zeke. I forgot what it was, but it was over at halftime. And with your seats, you can see the parking lot. It's like a perfect view. And I was calling it the Red Sea at halftime because all the Niner fans were leaving. And it was a Cowboys takeover at Levi's. Nothing like that has happened since. Nothing even close. The Cowboys have just curled up in a ball every time they show up here. Is that Sunday Night Football?
It's
5:20.
Yep, Sunday Night Football. Yeah.
America's going to be watching. I will be there personally. I want to think things are going to be different, but I'm a realist. 5-2 start. Cowboys lose here. It's probably not going to be pretty.
The thing is, I think the bigger thing with that game is like, because remember last year we talked all about it's a measuring stick game, blah 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 blah, and then it was a measuring stick. They didn't have enough measuring tape to measure. That's how much of a blowout it was. So I wonder if it's just maybe they don't hype it up this year and they come in kind of have a really good effort and it's a close loss. Anyways, potential NFC playoff preview again. 49ers are good once again. So
5-2.
5-2, and they head to Atlanta, where interesting team now. Now they have a quarterback. They have Arthur Smith is gone, so maybe it's Bijan's time to cook. On the road after the 49er game, mid fire risk. I don't think it's low, but I also even with Kirk Cousins, I'm not saying this is the highest fire risk in the world. What do you think?
Yeah, I think assuming they're gonna lose to the Niners, they're gonna come into Atlanta pretty pissed off. I think the Cowboys played pretty good indoors from what I remember over the past few years. I think they go into Atlanta, they demolish Michael Penix and the Falcons, and the Cowboys move to 6-2, heading to a game against Philly.
He's already putting Michael Penix as the starter. Wow.
Yeah.
You and Terry Fontenot, man, just like-minded. You guys need to talk shop, man. You love Michael
I think
Penix.
that's like enough time in the season for Kirk Cousins to play bad, the fans to start booing, the boo birds are out, media's chirping, people are asking questions. They make the move.
All right. We're getting a little bit low on time here, so we'll move a little bit quicker here. At home against the Eagles. First time against Philly. Fire risk anytime you play Philly, I think at this point is pretty darn high.
Cowboys win. Take care of business at home.
They did last year. But also that was kind of in the beginning of the tailspin. Did they start the tailspin or no?
The Niners did.
It was San Francisco.
The Niners.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Cowboys up. They're now 7-2, right, Dan?
7-2.
All right, 7-2, and they get to play the Houston Texans, a team you are not that high on, at home.
Yeah, so I'm going to sound like an idiot contradicting what I was saying earlier, but this just seems like a Cowboys game where they don't show up, coming off a big division win. Houston comes to town, Diggs on Diggs. The older
Monday Night
Diggs
Football.
gets the W. Yeah, I just think the Cowboys don't show up here. Texans get the win.
For some reason, that feels like a game that you circle. I don't know why. Maybe it's the fact that like the upstart team in Texas versus the team that no one cares, or little the little engine that could against the big powerful Cowboys. Kind of feels like a Texans game. I feel like.
Yeah,
I'm with you. All right, at Washington, go see old friend Dan Quinn again. Fire risk mid?
No. On Thanksgiving, Cowboys show up. It's their holiday. This is kind of the nice 2 weeks in the schedule where they get right after a disappointing loss. Take care of the Commanders. Dan Quinn, we love you. We miss you. Maybe next year.
This is at Washington, not Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving's the next week.
Who cares? There's like 10 people that go to those games.
Jaden Daniels don't scare you?
I think the DC Defenders would beat the DC Commanders.
Woo! Danny's out here on takes today. I kind of like that one, though, just from like an alliteration standpoint. All right, Thanksgiving, New York Giants at home. Fire danger. It's snowing.
Wait, the Commanders games? Oh, no, that's not Thanksgiving. Sorry.
That's what I just said. Yeah, come on.
You're right.
But hosting the New York Giants the next week on Thanksgiving, Thursday Night Football. Or Thursday, football on Thursday, excuse me. It's snowing. There's no fire risk, in my opinion. That's a how fast do we, turn on the Thanksgiving music and start eating turkey kind of game.
What is Thanksgiving music?
Just like nice music. I don't know.
Interesting.
Nice.
Yeah, I think Daniel Jones is benched at halftime. This game's a W.
I agree. All right. Next week against the Cincinnati Bengals, which is tough. At home, though, Monday Night Football. Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, and co. T. Higgins, maybe.
Coming off back-to-back division wins, this is, again, one of those Cowboys games where the hype is there, the anticipation's there, and they don't deliver. Bengals win again in a shootout.
Yeah, fire risk in that one seems high. Next week they head to Carolina. Go play the Panthers. Bryce Young, Dave Canales. Fire risk is low.
Yeah, it's pretty frigid here. I think Carolina is in talks to be the number one pick overall next year. I think they're pretty bad. And that's what they get for taking our running back. So Cowboys smash the Panthers.
Jonathan Brooks' touchdown, though. Does he have a touchdown in that game?
No, they don't sniff the end zone that game.
Wow. All right. Next week, they host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Baker Mayfield. Fire risk. This is a playoff team that won a playoff game, by the way. Fire risk is mid to high. I'd say mid.
I'd say low. I think Baker played out of his mind last year. Hurts me to say. I'm a Baker fan. OU Sooner.
Wow.
But I think the Bucs are due for regression. They really are. Without Dave Canales, they're nothing. Hot take. Yeah, Cowboys win easily here.
Wow.
Big Cowboys dub. What's that put us at now?
You got 3 losses headed with 2 teams remaining. So, I think you're 12-3. Yeah, 12-3. Wow. All right. At Philadelphia.
This is where they get us.
That's where Santa Claus in the Eagles, throwing snowballs potentially.
This is where smug Sirianni gets the Cowboys. Eagles win here.
Can you do your best Sirianni, like that one? Like, let me see your best impression of like that.
I hate that clip. It's when he's doing this with his stupid visor and his ugly pen in there. And
Joey, let me see yours too.
My fist pump?
No, what? No, you're the Sirianni clip of him just like.
Oh God, put me on the spot, Joe.
And then let's get that circus they got on the sideline with that whoever that guy is, their security guard or something.
Oh, hold on, man! Big Dom's gonna come after you. That's
get him out of here. Get him out of here.
Tell it to his face, huh?
I would.
I did so because the Cowboys game was the week after the Niner game, so that was the first week he was suspended. Big Dom. But I saw him when I went down to go to the field for like locker room and stuff like that right after the game. He got off the elevator too, and I was like, man, Dom is big. Dom is big.
Yeah, he's big waisted. That's about it.
Big Dom's gonna come to California and get you, Dan. But the Eagles get. Oh, go ahead.
He would have to catch me first. I'm way too quick for that.
I mean, you just tell him like I once fought Bryce Harper. Just embellish. All right. So 4 losses, 12-4 Washington comes back to AT&T. Dan Quinn, welcome back. Fire risk pretty low probably, but at that point, are the Cowboys playing for anything? Maybe they have the NFC East locked up. Is the 2 seeds already in hand?
You just read my mind. The NFC East will be wrapped up. We'll have the title in hand at this point. So the Commanders come to town, but not so fast. Cooper Rush leads the Cowboys to 35 points and a W, and the momentum train right into the playoffs.
You know what's interesting about that, though, Dan? I wonder if that actually was the case, and they were going to sit Dak Prescott. Do they start Trey Lance?
Then why do you have Cooper Rush? Then what's he on the roster for?
Well, I mean, why do you have Trey Lance on the roster? Why did you give a 4th-round pick?
I still can't answer that question.
I think Trey Lance is going to get a lot of preseason work. So, because they got to figure out what they have. We were going to talk Trey Lance today, but we've gone pretty long. So we're going to save that for our next podcast because I think Trey Lance, here's a teaser, is the most interesting player in the NFL this preseason to watch. And we'll talk why. But for now, let's end it on the schedule. Oh, wait, I can't forget about what's on Morales' mind. Is there anything on your mind after going to Oregon and then Joshua Tree? You just, what's the word for someone who's like in nature a lot? What was the word?
Someone in nature.
Yeah, we talked about it.
Someone in nature?
Henry David Thoreau. Oh God, it's gonna bother me. Hold on.
Yeah, sure. So What's on my mind? Joshua Tree, for those of you that have never been, I highly recommend. Super cool if you're into like bouldering and nature. Super cool place. Super quiet, tranquil. It's kind of hot. Yeah, we had a super cool Airbnb that was like 6 miles off the main road in the desert. Kind of creepy. And then we watched the movie Strangers. Bad timing.
Whoa, yeah. What are you doing?
Maybe that's my hotter take. I saw the new one, the new Strangers last night. Might have been one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
But you
And
were
it
so
even
scared.
No, it was so stupid. I wasn't even scared. And I think it's just me getting older and more critical. I'm a huge Planet of the Apes guy. I saw the new one. Horrible.
So did you see the other ones?
I've seen them all.
And you like the other ones, but you didn't like this one?
I liked them all, but they just dropped an egg on this one.
Wow. Because I thought this one might be the most hyped one of all.
Maybe it was too hyped.
Yeah.
I had such high expectations, and I watched the movie, and it just fell short. Not enough, like human interaction.
Well, speaking of setting sights high or hype high, you just predicted 13-4 for the Cowboys. Setting standard pretty high, Dan.
13-4, yeah, sounds about right.
All right.
Why is Joey's laughing over there as if he doesn't agree with me?
I wasn't fully tuned in, as Joe was saying. I was writing that Nico Collins story, but 13-4 does sound a little high. Seeing that, I don't know. What did they do this offseason? They drafted Tyler Guyton and Cooper Beebe.
It all starts up front, my friend.
I get that. And I think that's a good start, but something. But there wasn't. They lost arguably their best corner last year, Stephon Gilmore, the one that they relied upon the most.
I don't know how good that argument is, Joe.
Why?
I don't think he was their best corner last year.
Who was Deron Bland? Okay. Deron Bland.
Hold on. We got to save this. If you want to go on a Deron Bland was overhyped segment, we're going to have to save that for another pod.
I don't think he was necessarily overhyped. I think he deserves his flowers, but I just think when they needed someone to be on their best guy, the Cowboys, they kind of went to Stephon Gilmore as far as I saw, no?
That was one game, in my opinion. It was Seattle, which was a bad matchup, I think.
Didn't he cover A.J. Brown against the Eagles too? Gilmore?
No, he did. Yeah, he did. But that's also those are two really good receivers too. Same thing with Seattle.
Fair.
DK was the one guy that had his way with Deron.
He did.
I say 13-4. What's your prediction?
Me?
Yeah. Negative Nancy over there.
He's gonna have to think about it.
I do want to say that the win total for the Cowboys is set at 10.5. If
smash the over.
Smash.
I'll say they get it's right on that line. I'll say 10 or 11.
I think
10 is full. 10 is foolish. There's easily 12 wins just sitting out there.
Danny, we talked about there were multiple games that you gave dubs to that I was like, all right, fire this guy. So
I think 11 is worst case scenario.
We need to clip that.
Save it.
Yeah,
mark that clip. All right, we got to get out of here. I want to try a new thing though with ending the podcast. We'll see how this works because I'm going to end it with a word of the day. Okay, so word of the day for all y'all to go and use and think about. And today's word of the day is gadfly. Anyone have any guesses what a gadfly is?
I thought you were going to say ungulism.
Ungulism? No. Gadfly, in its literal sense, refers to any various flies that bite or annoy livestock. But it's most popular in its figurative use, however, where it refers to someone who provokes or annoys other people, especially in persistent criticism. And this is the funny part I thought about this. The example sentence from Merriam-Webster was, the journalist was known as a gadfly for exposing hypocrisy in politics. So we're just a bunch of gadflies at press conferences, and that's what we are. So, all right, guys. Well, hey, I enjoyed having another podcast with everyone. Sorry we were gone for so long. We'll be back much, much sooner, I promise. And tune in for next time.
Thanks for listening to How About That Podcast.